Hello, my name is Bianca Henderson, and welcome to the How to Make Your Mark Ansible Community Contributions webinar. It's, I think, the first of its kind where we talk about how to contribute to the Ansible project. And looks like a lot of you folks found out about this through Twitter, which is great. Interesting way to kind of find out how the word gets out here. And I'm actually going to put up one more poll before I introduce John Barker, who is one of our presenters. So I'm gonna put this up about basically how much experience attendees have of contributing to the Ansible project so far. And I'll close this in about a minute. But so like I said, my name is Bianca Henderson. I work on the partner engineering team, and my coworker Jake Jackson is also here. Oh, he's on mute, sorry. We will be helping out with questions. And I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. So this will run about an hour and a half or so. This webinar is being recorded. Slides and links will be made available through a follow-up email that'll go out. And when you have a question, you can ask questions at any point using the attendee Q&A interface. So there's like a little area that says questions, and you can just type whatever you want to know in there. And we will be reading questions as we pause for those, and we can also sometimes answer them right away via text. So we'll be going through those, and I'm going to go ahead and check on this poll and close it out. And it looks like most of you have not raised an issue or reviewed a PR or anything before, so this is great. You'll find out a lot of information. And without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to John Barker.
Hi everybody, my name's Joe Barker. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to learn more about how to contribute to Answer. And looking at the poll, I can see that 73% of you have never contributed in terms of raising an issue, PR, reviewing stuff. So I really hope that this presentation will be useful and we can guide you through that. As Bianca said, this is being recorded. We'll be sharing the links to the slides, which have got loads of details in and bits of reference information. So that should be useful as you learn more about how to contribute. So firstly, just a little bit about myself. I'm a principal software engineer with Ansible. I've been here about 2.5 years now. I started out full-time in core engineering, and since the back end of last year, so October 2018, I'm working full-time on the community. So that means understanding the challenges that people such as yourselves have, how to get PRs and issues moving, how to address the backlog. As you probably know, Ansible is a very popular project. I think we're number 7, the 7th most popular repo on GitHub out of 29 million primary repos. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of discussion and activity, and occasionally things don't go as we always want. So this is about how to get those things progressing. My contact information is on there. There's Gundalo on GitHub, Freenode, and at redhat.com. Please do feel free to contact me about anything. If anyone wants further assistance, mentoring, guidance on that, more than happy to help with that. So today we're going to be talking a bit about the following topics. So it's particularly about making people understand the different skills that are needed, what you as individuals can bring here, because I see 73% of you haven't contributed in terms of issues and PRs before, to break the myths around that. Show you a bit about the workflow for issues and pull requests so you understand how Ansible works. In particular, we're going to spend a fair bit of time talking about the PR review process because we think that's something that everyone can get involved with. And then finally, just a bit about how you can get more involved in directing the future of Ansible. So firstly, I just want to show you some of the main bits of documentation that we do have already. Just notice on this URL, so this is named Dr. Ansible Develop Community. So I'll just bring that page up for you now. So this is what we call the community guide. So this contains links of everything that we think would be useful to you We break it down by different sort of areas. So we've got a getting started section in here. And this is, for people that are just starting their automation journey, so wanting to understand more about, say, how Ansible works, about various different bits of books and training, how to get support in terms of contact. It's been snowing, so that was the snow falling off my roof. Apologise if you can hear that strange noise there. And then after that, we've got the going deeper section, which is a bit about how to interact with pull requests and bugs. And then the working with the Ansible repo is specifically about contributing code into Ansible through the PR workflow, what Ansible bot is, which we'll give you a demo of later, how to resolve issues, and then later down, we've just got a sort of a longer table of contents there as well. One of the pages I would like to particularly point out on here is this how to communicate, got a question page, this bit here. So the Ansible communication page, it lists all the different mailing lists that we have. So for example, the top one here, Ansible Announce, that's a read-only list, so you can subscribe to find when new Ansible releases, or say Molecule or Ansible Link, which are other tools that the Ansible family looks after. Mailing list for development, for lockdown, the different IRC channels that we have, which are good for more sort of interactive discussions, and the various working groups, of which there are many and much more than on this list. As well as we have a few language-specific channels. The Ansible-FR, the French channel, is particularly active. And just a reminder of the towers, obviously you've got commercial support there, so how to get hold of that. So essentially, if you only remember one thing from this entire presentation, that's that there is an Ansible community guide, and you can find out everything that you want from there. So when I spend a lot of time talking to people, I guess, like yourselves that haven't contributed before, and the main reason I get from people is that they don't think they can contribute because they're not a programmer, or maybe even not a Python programmer. So as a reminder, the core of Ansible is written in Python. Python needs to support 2.6 above and Python 3.5 and above, and the Windows module is written in PowerShell. Contributing code is obviously a very important part of Ansible. However, it's only one small part from a community point of view. We're going to see a lot today about documentation and how you can get involved with that. The module documentations are in YAML, and everyone here, I assume, has done something with Ansible, and therefore you have the basic understanding of what YAML is and how to write it. Similarly, testing changes, so testing pull requests, or looking at, let's say, pull request that would add a new feature or fixes a bug. That doesn't necessarily require you to understand how that fix works. It just requires you to take that fix, apply it locally, test it, and then give some feedback on the pull request to say if this works for you or if it doesn't. We'll go to all of this later on in more detail. Second most popular myth that I'd like to bust is people think that they're maybe brand new to Ansible, and in some ways these are actually the most important people that I want to speak to and understand. If you're brand new to something, you come in with no prior knowledge, which means that you really have to rely on the documentation, that if an error message comes up, that you really need to understand what those things mean. So whatever we can do to make those things easier, and simply because as Ansible we do try to be, as user-friendly as possible. The whole idea is that from going what is Ansible to writing a basic playbook, you should be able to do that within a day, and you should be able to do something useful within a day or two. So what I often say to people that are just starting is give us feedback, keep us honest. If something doesn't make sense, tell us. We'll see how you can do that later on. Third myth is that people may not be familiar with Git or GitHub. It is a bit of a different tool to have to get used to. There's loads of things that you can do without that. Later on, I'll show you a couple of links that GitHub themselves have got that are really nice bits of documentation. Also, don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's all how we learn. I'd like to think a very friendly community. We can guide you through that if you have issues doing that. Worst cases, say if you're operating with a pull request, you'll just damage your pull request. You're not going to contribute something bad into Ansible because we review pull requests before they merge, so it's all fine. One of the really useful things that people can do to help is to write integration tests. Integration tests for Ansible, as you'd expect, are just YAML playbooks. And again, we know that everyone here is able to do that. Extending existing test case is quite easy. You find a playbook and you just say, add in an extra test for that. Writing a test from scratch up, from the ground up, is a little bit more involved, but there's lots of examples in the testing directory. One of the reasons that pull requests don't get merged is that we don't have the confidence to merge them, and that's because we don't understand if they regress anything, if they break something, or if they work. So having automated tests means that we can speed up the rate that we take patches in for a certain area. Nextly, sorry, this one I'm probably going to get in trouble with some of my co-workers. There's two types of contributions, essentially. There's ones that require you to stick around, and there's others where people call try-by. Sometimes they use that term in a positive sense, sometimes in a negative sense. Say someone from this group comes in, you find one little typo or fix one thing, you create a pull request, you fix that, and then for whatever reason you never contribute again. You still done something really positive. You've made a small incremental change to the Ansible project, which helps us, and that's brilliant. So for a lot of changes, we don't expect people to stick around. We know that the technology that you use may be in your current project. You might not be using in your next project, but you might hit a bug in a module and want to fix that or clarify that, and that you don't actually care about that certain module going again. But that's fine. We understand that. I guess the exception of this is if you're adding in a brand new module or collection of modules that we would like people to sort of stick around to some extent to help those things through with our future issues. And our GitHub process sort of helps you with all of this. So I would like to give you some proof that this is how it actually works. And when I started using Ansible, I think it was version 1.7, so a fair few years ago. And I was using this in my previous company, and I was starting to do things. I'm not a programmer, so the main myth there that you have to be a programmer, that really isn't true. I think in the top 20 contributors to the Ansible project, but I don't write more than say a dozen lines of Python at a time in any pull request. My colleagues prefer me not to write Python. It's generally better for the project. So this is the first pull request that I did to Ansible in 2013, and I was reading through some documentation, clicked a link, it didn't work, and I went, oh, well, that sounded like it would have been useful. So I did a bit of a hunt around, and then I found where the documentation got moved to. I clicked the edit on GitHub page option, which Alicia will show us a bit about later on, created a pull request and hit submit, got thanked, and it got merged. As I moved on a little bit more, I found that I was running the Ansible Galaxy -- help command, but I couldn't work out how to get the help for, say, the init command or the different optional the upload command that were under there. So after a little bit of swearing at Python, I managed to work out that this is what I was trying to do, and to do that, tested it and uploaded this as a pull request. And this was 3 months after my first pull request, I implemented this. So this is how I started off, was mainly, and if you actually look at all my pull requests, you can see that a lot of them are documentation updates. You can also look at a lot of my pull requests and find me swearing and getting annoyed at Git because I couldn't get it to do the right thing, because I was getting conflicts or struggling with those things. And I got advice from people along the way on how to do that, which is brilliant. Sorry, just my slides seem to have frozen. There we go. So one of the great things about Ansible is that it's the community that makes us successful. Ansible at its core is an engine with a plugin framework. And one of the great things about plugin framework is it means you can create a module, it's standalone, it doesn't impact with anything. So you can create one, test it locally, works perfectly, and contribute that back. And I think that's one of the main reasons it's let us scale so much. Because collectively, the Ansible community is amazing. You are really generous, engaged, knowledgeable, and supportive. As individuals, we have our little specialisms. That might be quite deep knowledge, or it might be quite broad, narrow knowledge, but collectively we know everything, not just about Ansible, but about the things that we're trying to use Ansible to configure and manage. So by being able to get involved and help with that is what really helps. So there's this phrase that's used in Red Hat bit, and it's that the community is the force multiplier. So by helping you guys, by doing webinars like this, by being available on our C and mailing lists, we can really help you succeed. And like I said, if for any support, please do come and chat to us. Again, Gunther Red have my contact information details at the end. And you guys are the community. By taking some time out of your day to listen to myself and Alicia, and I can see loads of questions going on in the chat there. You are part of the community. You have become engaged. You are ambassadors for Ansible, and thank you for doing that. So for those of you who have looked, you may see that there's a few pull requests open. I think we're about 1,700 pull requests open at the moment, and that is a large number. But on the flip side, if that was say 5 pull requests, I'd be concerned, because I guess it would indicate that people have got bored of Ansible. Just to give you a breakdown of how that works, we sort of split Ansible into 2 main sections. There's things that are supported by the core team, so that's people essentially that are paid by Red Hat to work on Ansible, such as myself. So that might be the core team or the networking team. So in total, they cover around 300 modules that they support, and then it's the rest, the other 2,000 modules that we look at to the community, such as yourselves, for supporting. And what this sort of means is that we, don't expect some guy in the sky, someone with authority, to do reviews. That we're all collectively accountable and responsible for moving those things. And the community in Ansible is a lot about empowering you to be able to do that. Cool. So at this point, I'd just like to pause and see if there are any questions from you all.
Also, would it be okay to throw up the next poll before we go further about if folks know how to contribute to the Ansible project? Would that be all right? And then that's got
we can put that on while doing questions.
Launch this poll while we wait for questions. And sounds like we've got one.
All right, so we do have a question. Okay. Awesome. Let me mute myself here. We have a question, John. I think it's probably actually for both of you guys, actually. I want to know how to check out a module and learn how it is built to support Ansible and build my own. Are there any directions or places I could find that information?
Yeah, so I guess one thing that I didn't show, and I'll put it up on the slides once this poll is finished, and that's the developer guide. I'm just going to load that page up, ready to show you. Yeah, I can definitely show you that. Yeah, unfortunately, once the poll's finished, I'll be able to share my screen again.
And I will grab that. I will answer the question as well. So John's showing you guys right now, but I'll also grab a link to that and send it out in the answer as well.
Cool. Any other questions?
Okay, sorry, I was muted there. Are you ready for the next question, or would you like to go ahead and browse through the developer guide?
I will show the developer guide when I come back, because I guess we're still got the poll up at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, ready for the next question?
Okay, so the next question is, can the community submit PRs for core modules also?
Yes, thank you. That's a really good question, something that I will clarify. So, yes, we obviously welcome any contributions to any part of the code base. What that means is for core modules, we might have a slightly sort of higher level, or opinionated, I guess, set of requirements on there. And it might take us a little bit longer to get to those, because obviously, as you imagine, the core team has got a lot of things to do. But yeah, definitely bug fixes, test updates, documentation, new features, they're all welcome, be it for community or core.
Okay. There are no more questions currently. Any more questions from the audience before we continue? Just give it a few more seconds. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and once you're ready, John, we can continue with the presentation.
Yeah, so thank you for asking a question about how to get about the development side. So I guess this is a good point to sort of explain that from the Ansible documentation point of view, we split it into, I guess, sort of 3 areas. There's the main user-facing documentation, so it's in how to use Ansible, how to make it do things, and that will include sections like the module guides and module documentation. We then have the community guide, which I showed you earlier. So this is about how to interact with Ansible from community. For example, about how meetups happen, what are working groups, which we'll talk about later, how to raise pull requests. And then the third section is the dev guide, which I have on screen now. And this is specifically about how to develop or update Ansible to do a specific thing. So be that create a new module or a plugin, say an inventory plugin, an inventory script, what the coding guidelines are. So and the reason we split the documentation like that is for a lot of people, they will make patch changes to Ansible or maybe write modules that are only applicable to their local user case. Say if you've got a proprietary bit of software that you've created in-house and you want to control that with Ansible, you can hopefully fairly simply make a module update to do that. So create a new module to do that, and you wouldn't want to share that maybe. So developer guide talks through all of that. And again, we try to break it down by sort of how you might want to attack. So if it's a module that you want to develop locally, and this is always a good place to have a look as well, to check that if developing a module is the right answer, because sometimes it's actually to create a role. And then we've got further information about the specifics about the Ansible coding guidelines, about how to make code work on Python 2 and 3, and and then we link back to the community guide at the end. So Arjun, I hope that's answered your question. If there's other specific parts of the development side, please do feel free to put questions in the chat, and we can leave that to those after. So I just bring my slides back up. Cool, so in the next section, we'll be talking a bit more about GitHub's processes and how we use those at Ansible. So I can see from the poll that a lot of you are maybe newer to this side of things. So actually, in that case, I'd like to start right at the bottom of this page. So GitHub have got and created 2 excellent bits of documentation. So that's lab.github.com and guys.github.com. And again, as a reminder, we'll send out the slides that will contain the links. Well, they're really nice because they sort of split into 2 areas. There's a set of documentation to explain what pull requests are, what a feature branch is, how to rebase, how to create a pull request. And then the lab part is actually built into GitHub. So you can actually do this, and GitHub have got this nice little integration. So it will guide you through that, but you learn by doing. But at a high level, Ansible, we welcome all discussions, be it on mailing lists, Twitter, Reddit, Stack Overflow, chatting to us at meetups, Ansible Automator, Ansible Fest is coming up soon, and that's really good to have the discussion. However, if there's anything that you want us to track as an action, then we need to get that into GitHub. So we use issues for bug requests and feature ideas, and with those information as possible. For example, if there's a bug, seeing the snippet of the task that causes the failure, including any relevant inventory information, obviously remembering to remove any username and passwords, running Ansible playbook with -bbb, so that's verbose mode, will give us the most information, all the information that we need to be able to reproduce this. GitHub issues, however, are not for discussion of how does this work or is this the right way to do things. So we recommend that you use the mailing list of the Stack Overflow Reddit. And as a reminder, I showed you that list earlier on of the communication page listed off the GitHub guide. Pull requests, so PRs, there to generally fix one thing and one thing only. So for example, you might raise a pull request to fix a bug, or you might raise a separate pull request to add a new feature. We don't backport fixes, we don't backport features. So what that means is currently we're working towards the Ansible 2.8 release, which will be out later this year. So new features go into the Ansible release and will only be released in 2.8. If we get a bug fix in, we will put that in obviously into the next release, and depending on that fix, we will maybe look at backporting that into the stable 2.7 release. So say 2.7.9, I'm not sure where we're up to. The next release will get that as well. So next, talk a little bit about the actual the process that we go through. So when an issue, so this is based around Ansible pull requests coming in. So this is the process for those. So we'll get a pull request coming in. There'll be some automatic triage happening on that, and that's done by a thing called Ansible Bot. There's then a cycle of fixing the tests, updating, getting reviews, addressing comments, lots of discussion there, and then once the code has got the appropriate levels of reviews, it will get merged, and if appropriate, we will create a backport to get that fixed in the previous release. So the bit where PRs often get stuck, part 2, specifically around not getting any. So there's a number of things that we're doing to try and address that, which we'll show you later. So let's have a look at this actually in practice, because it's much easier to understand when we see what this looks like in reality. So this is a pull request for Linode. And what Linode is, which is a cloud provider, isn't particularly relevant, but it's basically some updates to it's a new module for Linode. So what we see here is we've got the tabs, so we've got the conversation and the files changed, the main bit. We see a description of what they're trying to do. We then see the Ansible bot using this app notation to notify the maintainers of these modules. So they've then notified that they need to come and have a view of this. We see Ansible bot commenting on the pull request, saying that there's a few things from a coding point of view that don't look right. For example, there's a better module to use for errors. There's some Python specific issues, and in the documentation here it said that the return type isn't set. So one of the nice things about Ansible is as soon as you raise a pull request, you get that updated straight away generally within 10 minutes, sometimes as long as maybe an hour if there's a lot of work going on. But this is so when you raise a pull request, you're still engaged, you've got the information you want as soon as possible. And then here we've got a nice example of how they tested it. So they've given us the playbook that they used, and they've then given us some information, including a bit more what this does and how they've tested it, including links to the actual Linode application. So this is sort of the extreme end of testing with PR, is this level of information. So if we see if we can find another example. So now here we've got someone else just saying, here's the playbook I used, nice and simple, it worked. And later on, we have a bit more discussion back and forth about something that was working, but then the playbook said it ran okay, but didn't work. And then we saw some back and forth about how the pull request should work, and trying to improve the interface. And right at the end, we can see that this did get merged once everyone had given it the approval, which is great. So at this point again, I just want to give people the opportunity to ask questions, especially if there's something around the GitHub pull request side or the Ansible bit. After this, I'll be handing over to Alicia, and she's going to walk you through the documentation side and give you an actual example of doing this on the fly. But are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. There's one from Nicholas. This is a really, really great question. It's kind of a two-parter. What work is most accessible for contributions outside of the core team? And how do you get changes approved if they do not receive attention from someone with contributor permissions? Cool.
Excellent question. Thank you, Nicholas. So I guess to start with, what's the most accessible? So I'm going to talk a little bit later on about GitHub Labels and how we organize the repository so you can find related work. So I always stay to start with something that you know. So for example, if you use, say, the VMware modules or say one of the cloud modules, or I don't know, the GitLab modules or the GitHub modules, and you use them, then having a look at those is always a good place. The other thing is we have monthly PR review days. We've got the link of that at the end of the presentation, but they're a great way to sort of come in and help out and understand a bit more about the process. So I'd really recommend that. So I hope that answers the first part. If not, please do put something else in chat. And on the second part, you're asking, and how do we get changes approved if they do not retrieve attention from someone with commit permissions? So I'll be honest, this is a real issue. There's a number of ways that we're attacking this at the moment. So sort of the more sort of brute force approach is, as I said, we're having these monthly PR review days. The core team as well are also looking at the backlog from the top, so most recently opened as well as from the oldest. And what we're quite often doing is sort of a merge and update and review from the top, but a close from the end of the PR, sorry, from the end of the backlog, the oldest PRs. And we're also building up more working groups and empowering those people and giving them permissions to merge. So you can imagine the entire backlog. There's related PRs in there and attacking those as block. It's quite often, in terms of actually how to get someone's attention, is to jump onto IRC is a really good way to get that. It's something that it's probably one of the biggest thing that keeps me up at night, is how to get these things visible. As we start to get the backlog reduced in size and we get more working groups, I think this will become easier and easier, that stuff will get seen. From the core point of view, they are now pretty much stepped away from any community PRs, apart from if they're specifically pinged to review, which means that they can focus on the core side, but then obviously we're looking at you guys in the community with my help to get the community side moving. I hope that's answered. So I see there's another question just come in from Robert, and he asks, what kind of timeline can you expect for feedback on PR for the community? It varies. It can be instant, and if you get the right set of people are notified, so this is the maintainers, then we can get this sorted quite quickly. So I'll just bring this to show you what this looks like on this pull request. So that's this bit here where we see the maintainers being pinged. And I recognize these GitHub IDs. I know that they're active users. So when they're pinged, they will go and update it. So we are looking at trying to build up the maintainers on there. If maybe if there's only one maintainer and they've done something else, for example, module gets created maybe a year or two ago for their specific need, but they might not be using that bit of technology or maybe even Ansible anymore, things can often linger. So in that case, again, jumping on IRC on the Ansible Devel mailing list, both of which are linked off the communication page, that's a good way just to sort of make our attention on that. And then we sort of end up with these, which is a good workaround for these sort of orphaned modules. Robert, feel free to send me message directly with a link to the pull request, redhat.com, and I can have a look at that. Obviously, that doesn't scale, but that's why we're hoping to get more people understanding of the process in here. Are there any other questions at this time?
There is one about demoing the ping module in order to kind of demonstrate how to write a module, but I think we're gonna go over like how to submit a PR and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably more in depth in the developer guide. But would you concur, John?
Yes, and if you have a look at ansible.com/videos or maybe ansible.com/webinars, I believe there's a session from James Camarada on module development that I think would be quite good to have a look at. Cool. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Alicia.
Hello, hello. Welcome again, and thank you everyone for coming. I hope you're getting good information out of this. I know every time we do a presentation of this kind, I add a little bit to my store of knowledge about the Ansible project, GitHub, ways to contribute, and stuff about our community. I hope everyone else is also finding this useful. So my name's Alicia. I'm the lead technical writer here on the Ansible project. And you can see my contact information there. You'll notice there's a theme. I am pretty much a Cozine everywhere. Although in a moment when I do the demo, you're going to see me listed as AK Cozine. I'll just warn you that this is a demo account only. So don't try and contact me with that, that user account. So I'm going to demo fixing, in this case, it's not really a typo, but the same process could be used for fixing a typo or any other small or even large change that needed to be made to the documentation.
Alicia, are you ready to show your screen? I was just going to go ahead and switch over to you. All right, I'll go ahead and
center wand.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm going to show this process from beginning to end. At the moment, you should be seeing issue number 51443, broken link in intro dynamic inventory. So this issue was opened by a community member who found a problem on the documentation website. And I will point out a few things about the issue. The issue type is listed as documentation report. That's hugely helpful because it adds that docs label. Over here on the right, the summary is short and to the point. It includes a link to the page where the problem is. It also includes some interesting information about the person's environment, which in this case wasn't necessary, but it's always nice to have more information rather than less. Or if one has to err on the side of too much information, I would say, when creating an issue. So this is one way you can contribute to the documentation. If you see a problem and you don't have time to fix it right away, it's fine to just open an issue, make sure it's marked documentation, and give us as much information as you can about what's wrong and where. And that is an absolutely fine thing to do. So here is the page that this issue relates to. And you can see right down here, this is the problem. This phrase here, inventory scripts, should be a link. But instead of actually providing us with a link, it's just giving us the URL. So that's a problem. You'll notice up here on the upper right, we have this lovely little edit on GitHub link. And this is the easiest way, hands down, to contribute to the Ansible documentation. I'm going to click on Edit on GitHub. And like I said, I'm using a demo account here. So I am logged in not as myself because I have merge capabilities on our repo, but as if I were a new user to GitHub. So I don't have a fork of Ansible, that's okay. GitHub gives me the opportunity to make it. It's very easy. I click on the link, fork this repository, and now I get a little message saying, I don't have write access to this project, no problem. GitHub has created a fork, and I can submit a change here. So I happen to know, and not everybody would, but that's okay, that the problem with this link is that it needs an underscore at the end. That's the only thing I'm fixing here, although I'll pause a moment and let people look at what the raw RST looks like. So our documentation is written in restructured text, and it's processed with Sphinx, which is a very commonly used Python documentation tool. Sometimes people get a little intimidated, but I promise you that restructured text is really mostly text. And if you were looking at a problem like this and you didn't know how to construct a link in Sphinx, you could look at other examples within the documentation. Pick another page that has a working link and look at that. So I've made my change. And as you can see, it's quite a long page here. And I'm going to keep scrolling down. And this section here is going to open the pull request. Or no, I guess it's just going to mark my commit. So I'm going to say fixes link, fixes link on the intro to dynamic inventory. That DocSite PR again directs Ansible to put DocSite PR label on it, which means the correct people, including myself, will be pinged about this PR when it's opened. I hit propose file change. And now I get a screen that shows my branch, which you'll notice that I didn't have to even know I was creating a branch. Those of you who know Git are nodding away. Those of you who don't may be confused, but don't worry about it. GitHub makes these things really easy for you. So right here, I am comparing our main branch is called devel against this patch 1 branch, which contains the change I just made. And I'm going to say create pull request, fixes link. This page here, or this set of this text here, is the template for pull requests. And as you can see, it adds whatever text you've added to your commit into the main part of the pull request. I'm going to add it here to the summary. The only really helpful thing that you need to think about here is making sure that the issue type says docs pull request. Again, this is about the right people seeing your pull request in a timely manner. But if you did know other things about the change you're making, you could add them here. Again, more information, too much information is better than not enough information. And because this is related to an issue, I'm going to 51433. Okay, actually, fixes number 51433. And again, this is the magic of GitHub. It will connect this pull request to that issue, and when the pull request is merged, the issue will be closed. And then I click Create Pull Request. And there we have it. PR 51491. And eventually, I'm actually surprised it hasn't happened yet. The test suite will be kicked off on this PR. There we go. Shippable is now running. Double checking that I haven't introduced any problems with this PR. Any questions about the demo, about contributing to the documentation? While I'm waiting for maybe folks who have a question but haven't typed it in yet, I will read something that John said about brand new folks being an incredible resource to us, especially for the documentation. It's hugely helpful to get feedback from people who are just learning Ansible. It's really difficult when you're a more experienced user to remember what it was like when you knew nothing. So new users are a wonderful resource for us. And if there are things about the documentation that are confusing to you as a new user, they will be confusing to someone else. And if you contribute that information to us, whether it's on IRC, via an issue, through an email list, however you're comfortable, you will be helping not only yourself and us, but also everyone who comes after you. And that's something I think I like to emphasize every time I talk to a group of any experience level, and that is that the community is a way of helping not only the project and folks who manage the project, but the entire community. You really are helping each other and not just us who work at Ansible.
We do have another question here. Sorry, I had a little echo in here. For both of you guys, is there documentation for which labels can be added? Does that work for any contributor? Like, how do you add or change labels?
Oh,
yeah, so the plus label doc-site PR is a special case, just so we can track PRs that are created by the edit with GitHub. And the reason for that is that they're generally much easier to review. So if they get that label on, we'll go and find them and review them quicker. All of the labels are assigned based on if it's a pull request, the files change within that pull request, or if it's an issue, what you list in the component field. So that should generally be just the name of the module, or say the plugin or the fax module. There is also under the Ansible chart, I'll put a link in the Q&A section, but there is some more information about the Ansible bot, which I will share as well.
Great. The last thing I want to point out before I turn control back over to John is this page. So John showed the community guide index page, and one of the links from there takes you to contributing to the documentation. We have an entire set of instructions. The instructions for doing what I just did, editing docs directly on GitHub, are here with a detailed list of how to do it, and other information about other ways to contribute to the documentation, as well as how to build the documentation locally if you want to look at it in more detail, some information about RST and Sphinx, and testing for documentation specifically. So I hope all the folks here who are interested in contributing to the documentation will take a look at that. We also welcome you to join the documentation working group. It meets on Tuesdays on IRC. There's an Ansible Docs channel, Freenode IRC. All right, John, you ready to take it back over?
Yep, thanks.
All right, I'll switch over to you in just a second. Here you go.
Thank you. So Alicia's contact information will be available at the end again. So I guess hopefully this will answer the question that we've just had about GitHub labels. So as I said, Ansible is a very popular project in whatever way that you measure it. So we use GitHub labels a lot to group related issues or ideas. So there's some sort of high level things that we use. So we have a label for bug, label for feature, a label for module, test, plugin, new contributor even, and as we saw, the docs and doc-site PRs. But we also use labels for the individual sort of areas in the code base, so be it cloud, Docker, AWS, VMware. So when you're looking for things, maybe if you want to see if you found a problem, but you want to see if there's already a fix there, you can look at the labels that exist and see if there's a pull request open already. So I'll just show you what that page looks like. So this is github.com/ansible/labels. So you can see all the different sections that are in here. Picking on AIX, so that's operating system that runs on PowerPC. So we can see a list of pull requests. I think most of these are that are about. So if you were interested in AIX, you'd click on this link and then have a look through these pull requests, and then we've got some issues. So the reason I can tell is that this icon here is the pull request icon versus this is the issue. So you can have a look there, see if something's already been reported. And quite often, if you do find a bug, someone will have found it before, and it could even be a fix available. So if you find a pull request that fixes a problem you've got, have a look at it, put some comments on, and that will help that get merged. And I've just closed my slides. That wasn't good. 1 second. Sorry about that. So now we're back there. So the other way you've been able to find slides is, you've been able to find issues and pull requests is we have a great tool that a guy called Sybil, who's on our core engineering team, has created, and that is this PRs by file. So you can see this here. So what we have here is we have in bold, we have the file name. So this is the file that exists in the Ansible repo. And then underneath that, we have the list of open PRs that touch that file, that modify that file. So say if I'd found a problem with the apt module, I'd search for /apt in there. So, and this is telling me that the apt module lives in modules, packaging, operating system, apt. And I can see the list of 9 open pull requests there. So you can see the name and the user that created them, as well as the pull request ID. So say if I wanted to, I was interested, I had to look at this and like, oh, I'm interested in adding download only support. I could click on that link. I can then have a look at the comment, look at it, download the PR, test it, put some comments on. This person has to say, I would also be interested in this user case, and put the testing feedback on, which gives us the confidence to know if we should merge. Another way is to have a look at the community wiki, which I'll show you a bit more later on, which is called the different working groups on, and this sort of groups people and related activities together. So it's a good way of finding things to help with. Yeah, so hopefully that answers the questions that people have got about finding content. If not, please do put some more in the chat and we can address those later on. So as I mentioned a few times, it's the confidence to merge is the thing that generally means why pull requests don't get merged and why we have so many things open. So reviewing code, reviewing pull requests is what we can really do to help. So we'll talk a little bit about how to review, but also there's 2 specific things that are going on at the moment, and that's we're trying to build up the various different working groups that I just showed you on the previous page, and we're doing these big PR review days, which is basically open forum for anyone that's brand new to Ansible, up to experts to help sort of review, and we will sort of help guide you through Again, links are at the end of the slides, and the next one of those is on the 21st of February. So there's sort of three types of reviews. There's the does it work, did the documentation make sense, and is the code a good thing? Is the code good in there? And one thing I think that's often overlooked here is that you don't need to be a programmer to do this, apart from maybe the last one. But even then, you could, if a non-programmer, you could probably still add some value. So again, thinking about the myths that we saw earlier, I'm sure there's at least one thing that you can help with there. And we know that a lot of this is subjective, so it's a gut feel about if these things are right. We're always looking for feedback on the documentation that we do have about how to review, so please do keep that coming. So in case of the functional review, it's knowing about if it works correctly for however you're using that module, because obviously people use modules in different ways. Does it work for you? When you test it for the way that you're using it, does that still work? And is the interface clear and obvious? The second part is the documentation review. So, you know, the examples in there, you should be able to copy and paste them and they should just work. If there's missing required parameters or that the descriptions for those modules don't make sense, that's really important things to give back. And third and finally is the code review side, the dev guide that I've linked to in chat. So that's docs.ansible.com/ansible/dev guide. That has all the sort of nitty-gritty of the Ansible way of how we like things to be structured, and that's the reason that we're quite opinionated on that, is to try and give some consistency across the different modules that Ansible ships with, so make it easier for everyone to use. There's a really good blog post that I like, and that's called the Gentle Art of Patch Review, and it gives you the idea of this sort of three-phase review. So firstly saying, you know, is the contribution sound? Is it clear and consistent in its user interface? Secondly, is it architected correctly? And then on the polish side, that would mean, you know, is the documentation good? Does it contain tests or other tests that should be updated? So that's a really nice way to sort of to understand how to give reviews. And you know, this Ansible is a big community. There's people with a mix of backgrounds and skill sets. Also, there's a mix of languages in here. There's a lot of people where English is not their first language. So with the community, we always like you to go above and beyond. For example, rather than saying you should do X, just a simple change to saying, I wonder if this would be clearer if you did X. It sort of invites discussion, it prompts other people to get involved, to give their views on that. I know as engineers, we often like or end up bike shedding. From Ansible's point of view, it's a coding guideline which is documented and is enforced by CI. So if our continuous integration, so the GitHub code checks that run, if they're green and the code is readable, the code is good. We try and avoid off-topic discussions otherwise on that side. So I've mentioned a few times about working groups. So I'd like to now go through the full list of different working groups that we have. And I'll explain a bit about what these are. So working groups are a way of helping and empowering a collection of people, so totally 2 or more, but quite often maybe 5 or 6 people that have got a shared interest in a particular area of Ansible. So at the top level here we have the community working group, which I'm the lead of, and this presentation, the various blog posts and webinars that we've been doing are part of that and a contributor experience. As Alicia mentioned, there's a documentation working group, and this is a great group for beginners to experts to help get involved with. We have the outreach, which helps organize various meetups. I think we're on about 200 or 300 different meetups all across the globe. So if you go to ansible.meetup.com, have a look there, get involved in the local discussions, they're really good. We have the release engineering, so about our development workflow, and the testing working group on improving test coverage. And as you'd expect on the cloud side, there's lots of different groups there that we have looking at improving functionality, adding tests, and obviously fixing bugs in there. The networking group, we have a O4 network working group. If you're not aware of that stuff, go to ansible.com/networking, and some of the specific platforms under there. I've got some groups. The software groups we've got listed here, some of these are quite new. So it'd be quite, if you're using this, it'd be quite exciting for you to get involved with those as they're forming and finding their feet. When a working group has just started, that's often one of the most interesting points to get involved, because there's loads of low-hanging fruit, so loads of simple things you can do. So on one hand, it could be a little tedious to have to look through all the, say, GitLab labeled pull requests that are open, but you might often find actually loads of this stuff is fixed already, so you can say, hey, this has been fixed already, so it's not needed. So quite quickly you can reduce the backlog. Also, you're working alongside other people that are interested in these areas, so it's a nice bit of discussion. Likewise, we have some different working groups for specific operating systems and hardware management side. Windows group is probably the most active in there. But there's other groups that you wanted, please do reach out. If you think there's something missing from there, please do reach out to me, especially if you know some people that might be interested in moving that area forward. So one of the things I want to make clear here is that with people getting involved with working groups, we're not looking for someone to dedicate N hours a week to this cause. It's, as and when, if you can drop in and help with some bits, that's amazing. If you join a working group and you only review one PR, and that PR then helps work through to get merged, that's an amazing contribution. And a lot of this is about, the working groups are made up of experts or, users of a particular tool. Going back to one of the earlier slides, I said, individually we know lots of things, but collectively we know everything. I, for example, have never used GitLab, so I'd be the one person to set direction. But if you use GitLab, you should be one of the people sending the direction to solve your challenges and make it what you want. Yes, a bit more, it's a mix of skill sets required, so we're not necessarily just looking for Python programmers in there. There's loads of different ways that you can help. We all use GitHub issues and pull requests, and sometimes the wiki pages that I just showed you to sort of track ideas. So if you had a look at the Windows working group under there, for example, they've got to come together as a group and put together a bit of a roadmap. If you want, we can give you IRC channels to have discussions, maybe even set up meetings in there. But it could be none of that. It could just be a collection of people, a wiki page, and that's what their to-do list is. If you've got any other ideas for working groups, please do message me. So to sort of recap, everything again is linked off the top page, but I do recommend that you take the time to at least have a skim through the community guide. Just to be aware of what other documentation's there. I'd love to see some of you as part of the working groups. Hopefully you've seen that there's different ways that you can help there. Our next big community PR review day is on the 21st of February. They're really interesting, especially if you're brand new to Ansible. You can sort of see how it's all done and put some of this stuff in practice. Also, it's fine just to join and sort of put it in the corner of your screen while you're working and just sort of idle and see what we're doing. There's lots of different meetups around the world. So there's the community-led one, so ansible.meetup.com. There's the main Ansible Fest, Ansible events, Ansible Automate, and Ansible Fest this year will be in Atlanta. Once again, please do contact myself or Alicia. I love hearing feedback from you guys. Also, when things don't work, when you go, I've tried to do X and I just don't know what to do, or I don't know where to find this information. You may think that's a horrible, bad question to ask because you failed, but actually giving me that feedback says, oh, well, there isn't a clear step from this thing to this thing, or it's not, you've looked somewhere to find this information and it wasn't obvious. So that's something that I can help fix, make everyone's life easier. So thank you very much for your time. I guess we'll now look over and see what other questions there are in the main chat.
So while we're looking for questions, I'm going to post something in the chat. As we were sitting here in this webinar, I got an email from someone who found a typo, and I'm going to post it to this audience. anyone would like to go ahead and fix that, that would be awesome. Here it comes.
If it's all right, I'll also post the poll, the last one that's kind of a follow-up to kind of ask, again, you know, do you now feel like you know more about how to contribute? So I'll go ahead and put that up.
Oh, yes, and thank you for explaining what bike sharing is. I will should have done that. Oh, and it looks like we've found the AIX user. So hello, William Woods. I hope you will, if you're not already, sign up on the AIX side. So well, I guess AIX is an interesting thing. So for those that don't know, that's an IBM Power Platform. Unsurprisingly, I don't currently have access to any Power Kit. So the lack of ability to verify the fixes, as in run the PRs, is one of the blockers for us merging. So having people that can take these PRs, run them on their systems, and as we saw on the Linode PR, say, hey, here's the playbook I ran, and this was the output. That gives us the confidence to merge.
Just going to leave this poll up for maybe 15 more seconds. We'll close it.
Cool, yeah, and if there's any more questions, do them in the chat, in the Q&A section.
I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. So we had a similar amount of attendees voting, and the previous poll, it was 68% yes, 32% no, and now it has gone up to 96% yes. So that's a really great thing. But yeah, if there's any other questions, okay, I have one from Nicholas Chia. So I'm looking for more information on building connection plugins. Can you point me to this information?
Yeah, so I'd say the connection plugins, it's probably best putting an email to the Ansible Develop mailing list. You can find the link off the community guide. I'll put it in chat as well. Because there's a lot of specific bits in there. So if explaining exactly what you're trying to solve, we can sort of guide you through. Or maybe you could actually, better yet, would be to create a GitHub issue explaining what the idea is that you're trying to do, and we can collect the information there.
I'll also post a link to some documentation we do have about connection plugins.
So we do have a follow-up AIX question from William. He says, so regarding the AIX group, how can I get involved? I'm pretty active on HashRel and hanging in Hash Ansible. I'm the main Linux guy at work, but I also have a few 50 or so AIX systems that I want to manage with Ansible.
Excellent. Yes, I've just put in the chat. If you so it's like, yeah, it's William again. Thanks. So if you just join Ansible Devel and ping me there, I can send you the appropriate links. I see there's a new question coming from Nicholas. So backport PRs will get merged generally within 2 weeks. So they generally don't need to be reviewed. So a backport is just a copy of what went into the develop. So they generally get merged pretty quickly. Cool, we'll leave the chat open for a little bit more to see if there are any more questions. I hope that people have found this useful. And again, myself and Alicia would love to have feedback on how you thought the presentation went, and if there's anything else that you think we should cover in the future.
John, I just wanted to make sure you did address the do module fix backport PRs generally have a higher, lower, or neutral merge confidence. I know you mentioned backport PRs, but was that something that you were specifically addressing? This is Nicholas's question.
Okay, yeah, so I guess maybe I should explain a bit about the backport process. So all work goes into the main branch, which is called develop. After that's merged, if it's a bug fix only, anyone creates a backport PR that goes to the stable 2.7 branch, 2.7 being the current stable release of Ansible. The release manager for the Ansible project will review those. Maybe, I think Ansible 2.7, I'm trying to get a release out every 2 to 3 weeks. So within 2 weeks or so, they should be reviewed and merged. Backport PRs are generally, assuming they don't change any user interface, so by that I mean that they don't add or remove any module option, they're just bug fixes, will get merged pretty quickly with high confidence. Let's only say a feature pull request gets raised by accident, they won't do. I see there's a question saying when we're planning another one of these. We're not sure when the next one will be, but it sounds like at least one person's found this useful, so I guess we'll do something similar. I don't, maybe it'll probably be a few months out, I guess, I'm not sure. Again, love feedback on this, so feel free to drop me directly. Drop me a message directly about what you liked and we can do this. Also, I think if you go to ansible.com/webinars, eventually within a week or so, the link will be available in there, along with the other webinars that we've done beforehand, and then on those are different topics. Also at the top of ansible.com/webinars, you see a list of the up-and-coming webinars. Any other final questions? I think we've addressed everything otherwise.
We don't see anything on our end. Yeah, any more questions? We got about 13 minutes left, so. Yeah, I feel like this was covering everything from kind of the simple, typo fixes all the way to, I guess, contributing to a feature or creating a feature even. So this was really, this went really deep into the topic, which I think was really great. But yeah, I don't think there's any more questions. So I guess we can close this out. Yeah. Yeah, as far as the future contribution webinar topics, as John was saying, you can always mention those on IRC or tweet at us at Ansible, I think. Yep. So, all right. Yep, or Reddit. All right. I think.
I see there's a question there about the recording and how to find the recording. Do we have information about that?
Let's see.
It will be emailed out.
Okay. Oh, the recording. Sorry, I misheard you as saying porting. Yeah, that will be emailed in a follow-up email over the next couple of days as a link within the email. So you'll be able to access that once the recording is converted. But we'll do that on our end. Yeah.
Yeah, and also what I'll do is these slides are available online and they have speaker notes in. So it might take me another week or so just to get the speaker notes sort of fleshed out, because I sort of do this a bit more ad lib, as you might have noticed. But I hope that these can be useful slides that you might be able to reuse yourself in your organization, as well as obviously refer back to for a bit more of the context, as well as just the links and bits within the slide themselves.
And it looks like we're already getting some PRs in for typos and things like that, which is really great. Just like immediate results during the webinar. That's awesome.
Hooray! Thank you, folks.
All right, I guess we'll go ahead and close this out. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you, John and Alicia, for presenting such useful information. We will go ahead and convert this recording and send it out soon.
Yep.
Everybody, we're going to go ahead and close this out.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and hope to see some of you on IRC, the working groups, and the review day soon. Bye.